When you're trying to get your marriage or your relationship back to a good spot and you're looking for solutions, oftentimes one of the things that comes up is marriage counseling or relationship counseling. The problem is that a lot of times when this is suggested, a partner can be quite resistant to this idea. So in this video, I want to talk about why your partner refuses to get relationship counseling and what you can actually do to help repair the relationship, even in this situation. So I've worked with thousands of people in relationships, going through difficult situations, challenges in their relationship. And the one thing that can come up quite a lot is this idea that their partner is resistant to getting any sort of relationship help. And this can feel super confusing, right? Because on one hand, a partner can say, I want this relationship to work. But when it comes to a potential solution, they're resistant against it. They don't want to get involved in this marriage counseling or this relationship counseling, whatever you want to call it. And this can lead to a lot of assumptions about why your partner refuses to get any sort of counseling or help within the relationship. And unfortunately, these misconceptions can be quite strong. So there are a lot of very inaccurate ideas that people have about why their partner won't want to go to any sort of therapy or coaching or counseling. Now, it's completely understandable to have these ideas, but oftentimes they're missing the deeper truth. So the first misconception about this is that if your partner refuses to go to counseling or get help, that they don't care about the relationship. Now, this is the biggest mistake you can make. It can be super easy to assume that if they're not willing to try therapy, then they must not care. But most of the time, it's not actually about whether they care about the relationship. It can be about a lot of other things, whether it's fear, pride, or not knowing how to face conflict. There can be many different reasons, but it's not that they don't care. The second misconception is that they are too lazy to work on it. Now, again, I can understand this, especially if you've been putting in a lot of effort. It can feel like your partner is maybe not putting in the same amount of effort as you, and refusing any sort of counseling or therapy can feel like laziness. It can feel like that they are just not bothered enough to actually make any sort of commitment to doing the work. But again, this is rarely about effort, even when it can feel like it's about effort. It can feel like they're lazy. They can feel like they don't want to put in this work. But this is a big misconception. And just to let you know, I'm going to go through the reasons why your partner may not want to go through counseling right now after this, but I want to get these misconceptions out of the way first. Another misconception is that they think that everything is fine and they're completely ignoring any of these problems. So oftentimes people aren't really ignoring the problems. If they're obvious to you, they're obvious to your partner as well. But oftentimes they can be working on these problems just as hard, but in their own way. Now, again, I can understand why you could feel like they think everything is fine or they just are ignoring any sort of reality of the situation. But again, this isn't the case. Oftentimes there is a much deeper emotion behind it as to why they are not necessarily wanting to get involved in this process. But then the biggest assumption is this idea that they just want to keep control and they want to avoid any sort of blame on their part. I can understand that when relationships struggle and it can feel like sometimes there's like a power imbalance that's involved, and it can be easy to assume that your partner is trying to fight back on this power balance and trying to give themselves a bit of control, a bit of say within the relationship and avoid any sort of blame. Now, this puts a lot of assumption that your partner is making some calculated move, but the reality is that a lot of people associate therapy or counseling with losing any sort of freedom or being made the bad guy or being told what to do. So again, this isn't necessarily about this idea that they want to control things, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't feel that way to them. So with those misconceptions being said, let's dig into some of the real reasons why partners can refuse any sort of marriage counseling or marriage help. Now, I want to be clear with this. This is not some sort of label. This is not me telling you exactly what your partner is feeling. Sometimes it can be a combination of some of these or all of these. But the main thing I want you to take away from this is to start looking deeper into the emotions that lead to this want to not go through this process. Once you start looking at the emotions more, rather than just assuming character or assuming laziness or anything like that, the more you look at the emotions, the more you're going to start to be able to understand more about why, from their perspective, going through counseling may not feel helpful to them. Understanding this route is actually going to help you to repair the relationship moving forward rather than relying on just going through counseling. So one of the first reasons why people refuse counseling is a fear of vulnerability. When you think about counseling, you think about therapy, it requires a lot of honesty, a lot of emotional openness. And if the relationship is in a difficult place and they've tried being open, they've tried being vulnerable, and maybe they've had it used against them or thrown back in their face or shut down or invalidated, or even if they're just not used to expressing their feelings, therapy and counseling can feel really scary. It can feel really unsafe. So not wanting to go through this process can be a way to avoid that awful feeling. A lot of people can be used to relationships where they don't feel like they're able to open up. Oftentimes that alone can lead to the breakdown of a relationship. So this idea of let's go through more of this, but with a third party there, can feel really scary. So this can be one reason why your partner may not feel good with this idea of going through relationship therapy, counseling. The second reason can be this fear of change. So counseling can shine a light on behaviors that need to change, and it can feel really threatening to someone who is comfortable with the way things are. If you think about it this way, even in toxic relationships, there is a certain comfort to a toxic relationship if you've been involved with it for a while. Let's say you have crazy big blowout fights where you scream and shout at each other, and then a day passes and you make up and you forget about it and you never address it again. That pattern and predictability can feel like a safe place because you know how it goes. You know that pattern and you know what to expect. The unknown can feel scary. So when there's a process that is there designed to disrupt this pattern, it can feel really threatening. It can feel really scary that there's a pattern going to be disrupted because it's a matter of, I don't know what the future is going to hold then. It can be a fear of handing off the relationship to somebody else who doesn't know you. So there can be a real fear behind that. Another reason why your partner may want to avoid this is that there's a low trust in the process. I've spoken about this on my channel before about marriage counseling. Often, so many people find this process to be ineffective. It can signal the end of a relationship. People in general cannot trust therapists or coaches or whatever it is, or have any belief that talking to a stranger that doesn't know them is going to have any help. People can have bad experiences in the past or heard about somebody else's bad experience. The amount of people who talk badly about marriage counseling because they had marriage counseling at the tail end of their relationship and they broke up, it can feel completely useless. So even just hearing about it on the grapevine can feel like it's a process that's not going to be trusted. And that can be really difficult to hand yourself and your relationship over to a process that feels like it's not really going to help. But another reason why your partner may not want to get involved with marriage counseling is this idea of power dynamics and control. So if your partner feels like counseling might take away their control in the relationship, they may push back against it because they may already feel like they have a lack of control. And by going into counseling, they're going to hand over even more control in this relationship. Like we said, therapy, coaching, counseling can challenge dynamics that aren't working for the relationship. And that can be uncomfortable for someone who's used to things staying in the same way. But one of the biggest reasons why your partner may not want to get involved with counseling is this idea of shame or guilt. Depending on what community you're in or who you're friends with or how you're raised, counseling, therapy can come with the association that you've done something wrong, that you've done something badly, that you're a screw up, that you're a failure as a partner, you're a failure as a man, you're a failure as a woman, you're a failure as your representative of your faith, as an example. So the idea of going to a counselor or a therapist can bring up a lot of shame or even some guilt. If they've done something that they weren't proud of, it can come with a lot of guilt as well because it means saying it out loud. So this can be avoided completely. But the absolute top reason why your partner may not want to go through any sort of counseling right now is this feeling of hopelessness. So if things have been in a difficult spot for a while and you've tried working through these challenges with maybe tools that weren't as effective, then it can lead to a feeling of hopelessness. Let's say you've been in a relationship for 10 years and over 5 years, you've tried in many small ways to turn this relationship around and it's not happened. Then you can automatically feel in this hopeless position, like nothing is going to help. And right now they've resigned in their mind to that the relationship is just not going to work. and it feels like there's no point in trying to fix it. It's just going to be a waste of money, a waste of time. And they're either resigned in this idea that this is the way the relationship is going to be forever, or resigned in this idea that eventually the relationship is simply just going to break up. If you think about it this way, it's quite logical for your partner to feel this way. When they're looking at the evidence of all the tries and fails, that is what their emotion right now, this feeling of hopelessness, is based on. Now, before I jump in how to address this with your partner and how to build this discussion around help within the relationship and fixing the relationship problems, obviously there's only so much that I can dig into in a YouTube video. The root of the issue always starts with emotional safety. Now, I don't want to dig in too much about that here, but I talk a lot about this with my members. This idea of emotional safety and understanding the emotions before you start trying to deal with the logical sort of logistics, right? So understanding the emotion of why your partner may not want to get involved with the relationship counseling, understanding that deeply will allow you to be able to work on better solutions for the relationship moving forward. If you do want to dig deeper into relationships, understanding the core elements of relationships and how they work, then sign up for my relationship bootcamp. It's completely free, but this is where all of my members start with to learn the fundamentals of how relationships work in order to start repairing and rebuilding the relationship back and understanding the principles behind relationships. If that sounds good to you, I'll leave a link to it in the description down below and up on the screen somewhere here as well. All you have to do is click on the link to grab your spot. So what do you do in this situation? When you're trying to fix the relationship and your partner is refusing to get involved with counseling or any sort of therapy or anything like that, what do we do? So the first step is to ask them what their concern is and listen to it. Make sure that you're validating on it. So don't assume that you know what their feelings are on this. You can come up with some hypotheses in your mind as to what it could be, but ask your partner their feelings. For example, hey, I think that when counseling comes up, this idea of counseling, and you seem quite resistant against it, what is it that you're feeling when I mention it? Does it feel like a waste of time? Does it feel like things are already hopeless? Does it feel like it's a me thing? And then when your partner answers, don't interrupt, don't defend, don't jump into explanations. Just in this act of listening, you're building emotional safety. And this is crucial to start to repair the relationship moving forward, is building this emotional safety to a very high level. So as your partner is talking about their feelings, learn how to validate, which is the next step. Now, I've done a lot of videos about validation and what it is and what it isn't. I'll link to a video on validation up above and in the description down below. But learning how to validate to a very high level is going to help you to build this emotional safety and to understand your partner's feelings on counseling specifically, why they may not like it, why they may not agree with it, what their feelings are about it. And this is really crucial to take the time to understand it rather than getting defensive or interrupting. What you're doing here is you're showing that you can build emotional safety without counseling. You can show that these problems can still be figured out without relationship help. And as you're building up this emotional safety, you can start to build potentially maybe an alternate perspective. So that brings me on to the next step, which is normalizing help as strength, not as weakness. So understanding that your partner may see therapy as some sign of failure, but be able to show that understanding and potentially reframe it with your partner. So for example, you can say something along the lines of, I totally get how counseling, therapy can feel kind of like a death rattle of the relationship. And it can feel like things are just broken and there's maybe no point in trying to fix it again. But before you jump in with an alternate opinion or a reframing of it, ask them, is that something that you feel right now? And if they say yes, then maybe offer a different perspective on it. So for example, I don't think that it means that we're broken. I think it kind of means that we're human. And I think that it actually shows strength to learn some better tools now rather than waiting for things to get worse. And learning these tools now will help to navigate and overcome some of these challenges that we face. You can even share examples of people who have gone through therapy or counseling and it's helped them. This could be friends, this could be celebrities, role models, whoever it is. Again, this is building up this evidence to show that maybe there's an alternate perspective that could be seen. And then you don't need to drill in this idea of counseling or coaching or therapy as the only option, which brings me on to the next step, which is to Offer options, not ultimatums. Well, a lot of people can shut down when they feel cornered, when they feel like their autonomy, their ability to choose for themselves has been taken away. Sometimes people can jump into this idea of, if you don't go to counseling, then I'm done. But that actually takes away autonomy, actually breaks more emotional safety, because it's forcing them into making a choice that they don't want to make. So instead, you can offer some options. Once you've shown that you understand their feelings and they feel understood, you can offer the option, hey, would you be open to just one session? No obligation. Don't have to say anything, just to see how it feels. Maybe that's an option. Or what if we did coaching or a workshop, something a little less high stakes instead, just to learn, both of us to learn some skills, or something with a bit of structure to it. What do you think? The goal here is to reduce this pressure, this threat level of being told that they need to do something that they don't necessarily want to do, and create some more options. In this way, you're still normalizing this idea of help, but maybe taking it down a notch and just saying, hey, this can be helpful for both of us. Now, at this point, your partner may still say no. So the next step after this is to start solo. One of the most effective ways to inspire change in other people is to lead by example. Now, this can feel difficult because oftentimes we get in this blame mindset of, my partner needs to do this, they need to do this. And we ignore the stuff that we need to do, that we can do better on, the relationship skills that we can build. But if you're going through the process of building this emotional safety and you're still learning the skills to grow how you approach things, your communication skills, your mindsets for relationships, even if your partner is flat out refusing to get any help, you can still go and do things on your own. This does two things. It shows that you are serious about growing. It stops you from becoming a hypocrite, where you're saying, if you won't do it, then I won't do it. And then it just creates this feedback loop of no one's getting any sort of help and no one's growing and the relationship is just falling flat. Then it becomes a double issue, right? But it shows that you're serious about growing. And as a secondary result of that, as you're still building the emotional safety, understanding your partner's feelings, it softens their resistance once they see that you're not trying to force them to do it. You're simply going, this is something that I think is going to be useful for us. And I think this is going to be useful for me to be able to develop better relationship skills. And you're free to do whatever you want to do. I understand it, but this is something that's important to me. So it softens their resistance once they see that you're not trying to force them into doing something they don't want to do, but you're also walking the walk. You're not just telling them what to do. You're actually saying, hey, I'm going to do this regardless because I think it's really important. In this way, you can present it to them in the way of saying, I know we spoke about counseling and you're maybe on the fence about it or not feeling like it, which I get, I understand. But I just want to let you know that I decided that I want to talk to someone because I want to be the best partner that I can be no matter what. So I just want to let you know. And if you have any thoughts on it or anything like that, questions, like, I want to open the door for you to be able to ask that. I'm not going to shout or get mad or defensive. Feel free to tell me whatever thoughts you have on it. And then long term, make sure that you are focusing on growth, not punishment. So make sure as you're going, the message that you're putting out to your partner isn't you need to go to therapy because you're the problem. Instead, focus on the process of growth. For example, I want to learn new ways to connect. I want to learn new ways to communicate. I want to learn new ways to support and build a good relationship. So this way you're making it about the relationship that you're building, not just the pain that you're trying to stop. And focus on that growth. Focus on making sure that you are growing regardless. And this is one of the most crucial things. You're doing it regardless of whether they do it or not. You're still leading by example. You're showing that this is important. This is something that I value. And if you want to join along, great. But if not, I understand and I can show an understanding of why you may not want to. We've spoken about all of the potential feelings earlier on. Being able to take the time to understand them, the context around them is going to be really crucial. And then most of all, give them time. When resistance is very high and this hopelessness, this feeling of or fear of getting help over time, this resistance softens. This is undoing what we call expectancy bias, which I've done a deeper dive video on, which I'll link to up on the screen and in the description down below. And this is crucial to repairing a relationship. This idea of expectancy bias. Expectancy bias plays such a huge part as you start to change what you do and how you do things in repairing a relationship. But this expectancy bias, this resistance, will soften over time. Understanding how to overcome expectancy bias, and keeping through your changes is going to be really crucial for supporting them through changes that they want to make. But it all starts with understanding this expectancy bias and why they may resist these changes in the initial stages as you start to repair the relationship. So I'm going to leave you with that deeper dive video, and I will see you over there.